Hey there, remember Sasel?
¡Cucarachas!
You might probably not recall it, but we did a small tiny video on him a while back that was pretty much surface level, considering it's more of a video reaction to him reviewing Returnal for the PS5, which is a bit silly because the main purpose of the video was to showcase the general trend of the guy in regards to his content. Saselandia, or Sasel for short, started off as a rather obvious console wars channel, or a gaming channel in general, but little do you know, the guy has been, ever since we did that video, on a downward spiral, which has been extensively documented by people like Jason Borja for the last years. So, okay, what happened to that guy? Let's do a quick lightning round recap. I don't know too much about PC hardware channels and the sort. I know I haven't studied a system admin degree at college, but you can notice the content Nate Gentile puts out is not the kind of niche I'm into. But basic gist of it, Nate Gentile is a Spanish PC hardware channel that's certainly fair for the kind of audience he's into. But okay, what does this have to do with Sasel? Well, Sasel, as you might know, is a PlayStation and Sony hater. And when he heard Nate Gentile talk nicely about the PS5 Pro or so, Sasel did find a new enemy to mock. The only problem for Sasel here is that Nate Gentile responded in a whippy comeback on the stream that left Sasel with his feelings hurt, so his eventual constant responses to Nate Gentile were even a decline for his reputation, the beginning of the end of his downward spiral into madness. The world of Sasel, or El Mundo de Sasel, Sasel's alt channel, started as a relatively decent football channel, but when his favorite soccer team didn't give him good vibes, he pivoted to the sort of politics your boomer uncle on Christmas dinner might spout, with all sorts of conspiracy theories about the 2030 agenda, the vaccines, etc, etc. This was a point where Sasel will start to get obnoxiously political, and will be defined as yet another anti-woke cultural war channel like the many others that are on YouTube. After all, he's burned all sorts of bridges before. Xbox doesn't want to collaborate with him, nor does Nintendo, because it turns out to be a lazy asshole, and the most evident thing is that he starts to show off a certain type of schizo-like personality in his videos and live streams more and more. But then, Sasel will find a collaboration with a green company and not the Xbox One. To put it in layman's terms, VOX here in Spain is a far-right political party in Spain. Very, very far-right. This all transpired during the apex of the Catalonian elections, where Sasel did make himself a living meme by just doing this.
¡Viva Vox! ¡Vamos! ¡Y me doy el lujazo!
Everyone has seen this meme on TikTok in Spain. Sasel even has been recognized as the meme guy, and this was clearly evident since VOX itself used the said meme on a political campaign for the Catalonian elections. This did fill with clearly the rotten heart of Sasel. He's been repeatedly giving himself the luxury on videos and streams ever since, but there was a problem. This was meme fame. There was little to no growth on Sasel's social media after the meme, and little to no residual fame, even though he momentarily attracted the right-wing audience like that, because to put it simply, Sasel has no novelty aside from being an average anti-woke channel. But things got worse. It seems that a clown can only attract clowns, and by the beginning of the year 2024, Sasel received a lawsuit from Spinecard, some sort of retro gaming YouTuber who has a massive ego to think he invented the retro gaming market or something. It was rather noticeable that even then, Sasel's consequences for his actions started looming in, and his toxicity towards people started to pay off, in a way that the people who laughed at him before laughed at him harder. But again, things got worse. Loulogio, and I know you, English-speaking peeps might not know him, is a notable comedic figure in the Spanish YouTube community. But little do you know, the man himself became a spokesperson for the Spanish PlayStation during that time, for which Sasel hasn't really reacted as nicely. On Loulogio's response of sorts to Sasel, he made a comment about Sasel's then girlfriend, Maria, saying how Maria was having sex with other people next to Sasel's room. Let's put it lightly. Loulogio's comment was a bit off, And maybe this will have been a moment where people will sympathize with Sasel for just a tiny bit, but Sasel has made it evidently clear that it will fumble the whole situation in such an embarrassing way, making the people who laughed at him laugh even harder. But yet again, things got worse. There are clowns in the circus, but there are also lions who will eat you to shreds at the very minimum. And like that, people saw an opportunity to feast on Sasel's girlfriend drama even more, especially drama channels who wanted a tiny bit of more of interaction and engagement. UTBH, un tío blanco hetero, or what would usually translate him as a straight white male, is one of those anti-woke drama channels of sorts, alongside Javi Oliveira as well. And UTBH made as well hurting comments about Sasel's alleged cockatry. This led to a debate on Javi Oliveira's stream, where both UTBH and Sasel will yell at each other like chimpanzees, leading Sasel to be even more pissed off.
Quiero que ahora... No, Quiero que ahora mismo le pidas perdón a María por decir que estaba gimiendo. Quiero que le pidas perdón ya. ¡Ahora!
And yeah, surely it turned out so well for Sasel to pull out a clean Eastwood with just acting like a 1950s gangster saying, "Don't mess with my girl." I'm pretty sure that turned out fine. Of course, anybody will know at this point how YouTuber relationships usually go. Case in point, I don't think I like when people make such cutesy compilations of YouTubers breaking up with their girlfriends in horrible manners, and that's scary. Sasel, either way, had his cute moments with MaryAlley, his girlfriend, who had an OnlyFans, by the way, where she even appeared on his streams, up until the point where she stopped appearing, and then Sasel tried to play off that he broke up with Maria just to mess with trolls, but that surely just made things worse when he actually ended up breaking up with her, making him live at his mom's house. This is pretty much now a critical point for Sasel, as he becomes more desperate to return to her or even become a complete insult criticizing Maria's behavior as a generalization of women. Sasel right now is at his lowest. Nearly all his videos are underperforming, both on the gaming channel and the politics channel. Oftentimes a lot of these videos on both channels are the most obvious bait possible that nobody will fall for. But this paints a broader picture for Sasel. Sasel's days are counted, and as he gets older, soon he'll reap what he sows. Nobody wants to collaborate or work with him. Nobody wants to get near him except his most loyal fans, who happen to be on the most fringe side of the far right. And most notably, Sasel has dug up a hole so deep ever since we saw his Returnal video, he's done for. So funnily enough, that will be the last straw that drove Sasel into the end of the story, a final stop to his career. But it wasn't clearly evident how not many people learned his lesson. Something funny happened. I wasn't as much of a DSP detractor viewer for a while, but I was browsing innocently enough through my YouTube recommendations until I noticed something. DarkSydePhil started a whole channel segment called DSPOLITICS. Oh no. Oh no! Well, you thought this was going to be just about a Spanish YouTuber? I speak English for a reason. Yes, DarkSydePhil has dipped his toes in the world of politics, and like Sasel before, it didn't pan out as well as he expected, with an ever-diminishing viewership and all. It's an entire clown show. DarkSydePhil, though, started his DSPOLITICS arc very recently, by the beginning of December 2024, so this isn't really all news, and this is why I'm making this video in particular. DarkSydePhil obviously did fumble this around like a whole clown. He started the very first segment of DSPOLITICS, which is about the racist SMS messages about himself and his trolls and detractors and whatnot, which is obviously a really bad sign. Not only that, Phil started off rather on the fence-sitting side, making milquetoast takes on different political dilemmas. But eventually, he became further and further into this Trumpian grift ever since Donald Trump was re-elected, becoming growingly racist, not really that much yet into outright racism though, but rather an all lives matter type of racism and bigotry. And I mean, couldn't you tell before? The guy was being anti-Semitic on a Dead Space stream.
This is what happens when you let the Jews do whatever they want. You've let the Jews overrun space, and now look at this.
Some things never change, I assume. You might find a bit silly to think about this, but Phil is so detached from reality itself enough to make even worse political takes. Kind of like Sasel does, because he had the privilege, not financial mind you, but social privilege, of not interacting with real life for long enough. But when we had talked about enough privilege to just spot whatever nonsense your uncle might throw away on Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner about ships altering the weather, there's a certain particular person on YouTube that could easily for a while get away with it. Unlike these last two, and you wouldn't believe that, as Quentin Reviews put it once, this might be JMAA TV tradition for a while. But I'm talking about PewDiePie. Bit ridiculous to say now again that PewDiePie was a poster child of YouTube for a long while, because it will be nonsensical to repeat what has been said plenty of times. But PewDiePie is the original exemplary case of how big gaming-centric channel can drive itself desperately into further right-wing politics, even for a so-called joke. The implications of calling this sort of hate speech jokes might be a point of contention I might tackle later. But with PewDiePie, there was this phenomenon called the Pewdie Pipeline, which drove for a moment people who usually watch PewDiePie and his politics into radicalizing themselves and further into the right wing. I mean, just look at it. He's the guy who paid Indian guys on Fiverr to hold up a sign that said, "Death to all Jews," before dancing and prancing around. PewDiePie had the privilege of having so much money and fame, he could basically do anything without consequence. But still, in an effort to stay relevant and in the conversational mouths of everyone, somehow, Peter still pursued that infinite money and fame by just making worse and worse political jokes and takes to keep himself on the throne all the time. The problem, especially with these jokes, especially the ones coming from PewDiePie, as Irabs will later point out in a video about Sam Hyde, is that they ride so hard a wave of meta-irony that actual fascists and neo-Nazis take it as genuine coded validation from Felix himself, indicating that PewDiePie is a genuine racist, as evident in the infamous Pouchy Bridge clip. The other problem, however, and the subsequent apocalypse that happened after this infamous clip, is that it had repercussions on the rest of us who were mere mortals who weren't as big as PewDiePie or YouTube it themselves. All of us had to pay for the broken plates, especially following the subsequent demonetization enforcements that were put in place afterwards, which hurt the livelihood of those especially not as bigoted as Felix himself, and will lead to the current YouTube landscape. PewDiePie just got away with this sort of stuff, given that YouTube looked at alt-right content back then as something trendy, case in point. But it's no wonder why so many anti-woke channels have to get away with this stuff next to the innumerable slop channels existing today. So you can imagine what kind of repercussions someone like Sasel or DarkSydePhil might have for the general internet ecosystem if they were big enough or as big as PewDiePie. And you can imagine there's a tendency lately of gaming streamers like these becoming political in the right-wing grifter sphere for money and clicks. I already talked about the political implications of all this sort of stuff that has on our current democracy and social media, given that the usual use of metrics is part to blame here. But why will they want to do this sort of stuff for money and clicks? It's because it's stupid. Bye! Do you want on-the-ground news reporting? Great, so do I! Okay, sorry, no, that was obviously a cop-out. Obviously, not everyone in this term is that stupid. I know some knowledgeable people that got from gaming into political streams, and some of them are good either way, but you know how this goes. There's not only capital to take in mind on this term, but also the dreaded social capital, which is what Marx's talk is all about these days. But I have this sort of detailed about the sociological reasons of why this is a thing. I know it's pretty bad to think, but being a content creator these days, or being an influencer or streamer online, is sadly competing with other similar ones to you on any platform 24/7 to get the most attention and money possible. After all, not only money and attention are both finite resources in this landscape, but also there are small businesses of sorts at least. So we get to a point where some YouTubers and streamers, especially gaming ones, when screaming in Fortnite or barrels in Amnesia isn't enough, they get to do outlandish or even unethical things for attention and money. There are obviously hard ways to get attention and money, and there are also easy ones. And one of the easier ones is to do something stupid enough to catch on fire. This is an easy route, obviously, in terms of a typical YouTuber or streamer evolution. Normally, every single content creator on any platform tends to evolve in a way where they're not just stuck playing video games for a living and the sort. People diverge into other creative and professional endeavors when YouTube and Twitch aren't enough. For instance, Markiplier, the very well-known gaming YouTuber next to PewDiePie, has delved into other creative enterprises, such as creating a movie based on an indie horror game called Iron Lung. To put a close contemporary to, Stephanie Starling, a well-known gaming journalist on YouTube and Discord, has diverted it from just making the weekly YouTube Inquisition to doing consultancy and writing for other indie tech game titles and even wrestling, despite the fact that she has a chronic back pain which will instantly drop her away from doing wrestling altogether, which captivated the wrestling scene as Commander Sterling. And to put a Spanish contemporary, because why the fuck not, DioScript has went on from regular gaming journalism to living up successfully of making deep, intricate, and well-researched video essays which dive deep not just into the mechanics of gameplay of games, but also on the philosophical and ethical implications of certain games and the game industry even. And he even has a dedicated series that dives deep into the history of gaming itself. Not everything is black and white. With money and fame, you also have enough resources to do more creative work than just streams or content on YouTube or Twitch, and perhaps express yourself better, and as well as having equally the same chance of putting off that money into the real estate business, evicting your grandma in Andorra. It's pretty usual to know then that a lot of these content creators like Sasel, DarkSydePhil, or similar have not matured well enough to get on the mental age they started having on the beginning of their careers doing content, because of a whole plethora of reasons, and especially because their money and fame of sorts came like a winning the lottery. So it's obvious they don't just want infinite money, they also want infinite relevancy. This is a problem that has driven rappers like Drake into the abyss when he got constantly dissed by other rappers in his scene to the point of being addicted to nitrous oxide and the sort, ruining his career further. He wanted to be the mouthpiece of everyone forever non-stop. This sort of cultural rot and detriment doesn't usually happen in older industries like in music or film, even though in the film we can already notice a black hand of slopification of culture for the sake of making profit here and there. Content creation and gaming are still young industries without too much market regulation, and they're prone to market exploitation. Similarly, gaming YouTubers and streamers have become political on both sides of the political spectrum, left or right, not because they did see a genuine desire to make a political impact, but rather because they saw dollar signs in discussing politics no matter what. Even streamers like Keffel, Hassan Piker, or Destiny had their roots in gaming as well. Look how that turned out. This has some final implications in the broader aspect of political discourse, similarly to the numerous anti-woke grifters who are gaming tourists. They poison the discourse well with noise just for a few extra clicks and pennies, which has some rather negative implications in the political aspect. Usually this noise is a distraction from what should matter in politics, and they are a detriment to the well-being of our society. Let's face it, YouTube or Twitch alone are not reliable as a lone source of income or attention, and this seems evident because everyone, including Sasel, DarkSydePhil, PewDiePie, all the aforementioned creators I mentioned before, are currently looking for alternate revenue or attention sources. So there's a constant need to evolve elsewhere, and there are better and worse ways to evolve as a content creators. Politics sadly has become an easy wildcard for many content creators who have no basic idea of what they're talking about, thinking they're going to earn a penny out of generating such polarizing content for the sake of extra clicks. And this will lead to problems, because if we don't take politics seriously, we won't take the fate of our species seriously. So I come as a sort of voice of reason here for all of you who are content creators. If you want Don't be afraid of exploring other creative endeavors. Please consider it. Don't fall for the trap of get rich and famous quick schemes of making more infinite money or fame. Because as I explained before, that isn't a very fulfilling way of achieving anything positive. Maybe yes, more money and fame will give you enough resources to explore further other creative endeavors, but don't think of them as a goal. Think of them as that, a resource or a tool to achieve greater things that will lead to a better future for yourself or for others. I'm sorry if I keep beating the dead horse of capitalism again, but yes, conditioning us into such banal pursuit of nothingness, such obsession with hoarding money and fame for nothing just so we can pretend we mean something. I don't think that trillions of dollars are going to necessarily make you a historical figure. I'm sorry, honey, but historical figures are not always made of money and fame. They're made of the impact they made in the world. And if you find that a problem, I don't know, talk to a therapist or something. Seriously.